Yeah.
Whatever,
Yeah.
whatever that means.
Fun organic takes.
Fun organic takes, my friend. So
My
what's happening, dude?
What is happening? I just experienced another typical first game of the season for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's what's happening for that one.
I
Which
watched it all the way till the very end. Like I didn't see the last 5 minutes of the game.
we had a really good first two quarters because we were up 14-0, and then we were about to go up 24-7, and then Travis Etienne fumbles like right before the goal line. The Dolphins score an 80-yard touchdown with Tyreek Hill. And then, the momentum in sports is a bitch, and we end up losing, right? On a last second field goal. And of course, as a Jacksonville Jaguar fan, it's a lot like poker. We're like, oh, of course the river's gonna happen. No, wait for the river, right? You're gonna accept defeat. You already know it's gonna happen, and we end up losing. So
Like you said, typical shit right there.
typical, right?
That's brutal.
Right. It's like getting aces, and you have aces, get it all against kings, and you're just like, oh, wait for the fucking king on the river, and the king hits on the river, of course, because you're just fucking hate yourself, and that's the kind of loss you bring onto yourself.
Bro, some people's lives almost play out exactly like that. like their entire life. Like they're all in with the best, and then that king hits on the river, or the ace hits on the river, and just ruins their whole life.
Right.
So I get it. Well, we'll go ahead and get started here. Welcome to the Cold Deck Podcast. I'm your host, Cold Deck Chris, no longer Polarizing Chris, although that's been pretty controversial. I've been getting a lot of DMs from people saying, like, why'd you change your name? Go back to the old name. I go, really? I hated that name. Like, I had it for the longest time and I wanted to change it. I think Cold Deck sounds way cooler, but
Yeah.
I do it for me. I don't do it for anybody else. So,
well, Chris, I'm not gonna lie to you. Your name in my phone is Polarizing Chris.
I'm sure it is.
So.
It is for all of the degenerate friends that we have. I'm almost certain of that.
True.
Yeah, it's going to take some getting used to. Change is good. Change is good.
Right.
For you guys watching or listening, I have with me one of the OGs, one of the first few people that I met when I started playing the game, especially on stream, live at the bike back in the day. God, that feels like ancient history. Not only is he one of the best human beings I've met in this game, but we've become very good friends off the felt, outside of poker, and someone that I admire, who's a father, a fitness enthusiast, and now a badass podcast host who, honestly, without him, this show would probably not exist, because he put his boot right in my ass to get this thing off the ground and start recording. So without further ado, I'm here to introduce Allen Katherman, aka AK Poker back in the day, also aka ShiftEQ. How's it going,
man? It's going great. A lot better after that introduction, Chris. I'm flattered. Like, bro, I usually require 2 compliments and a drink, but I think you just passed all of them, man. I'm all yours, bro.
Was that the panty dropper intro, or what? Did that get you warm and fuzzy inside?
That's all the warm and fuzzies, bro. That's like the pre-workout of life. Oh my God. If I could package that into a scoop, my God, please.
Oh, dude, we'd be billionaires for sure. Are you kidding me? Who doesn't like getting compliments? It's like I've been in sales for most of my life, and it's funny because they did a study, and it's even if you're in a buying situation and a salesman compliments you and it's a lie, like it's fake, like, oh, I thought you were 21, you're 38, I thought you were 21, right? Like it's bullshit, but for whatever reason your brain still accepts the compliment as positive. Like it puts you in this like warm and fuzzy state, even though the guy or gal is full of shit. It still makes you feel good. So it's kind of weird that like you said that, and I meant every word. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I was full of shit. Although I guess you would never know if I was, right?
Now that I know that you're about to give it up, I didn't really also mean it, by the way. I got what I wanted. Yeah, I got it.
I got you feeling the warm and fuzzies right there. So no, man, I'm psyched you're here. I know we've been trying to organize this for a little while. I'm still in my infancy. We've been trying to figure out different ways to promote and things like that, and like, this is just something that I could not be more grateful for your advice, your support, and just overall, obviously, your friendship. But like, this wouldn't be happening without you. So everyone listening, you guys got to go and thank Alan here. Okay. Either via Instagram, or are you on TikTok? Do you do
I
TikTok
am
or just
not on.
Instagram?
Well, I was
Yeah,
just
neither am I.
Well, I do have a TikTok, but I haven't posted anything in about 2.5 years.
Same.
That whole agenda thing about China owning TikTok or whatever that was that really impressed upon me. And I still don't know if it's true or not, but I just, that's the reason when I never started. And so,
It's definitely
yeah.
true. China does own TikTok, and the ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, right, the umbrella,
Mhm.
is government backed, China
Oh,
government backed. So that is not something that, yeah, that's not something I would imagine most people would believe, but
right.
yeah, it is the truth. It is.
Now we got a little bit of conspiracy theory going on in this podcast too now, Chris. This is just a full, well-rounded everything. First it went from how you get into Allen's pants a lot easier, which we just found out is by a slew of compliments. And now we got who's running social media and they're getting all of our information. This is great, bro. Already. See, this is why I told you that you should have done this, because you're meant for this. You're meant for this, bro. And
I'm
that's
meant
another
to
thing, right?
I'm meant to spread disinformation and conspiracy theories
No, but
online. That's
no, but you're a genuinely authentic human soul that brings livelihood to everyday conversation. So when I asked you, when I push for you to do a podcast, I think I'm more of wanting to hear what Chris has to say and his take on a lot of different things. Like I know like a lot of poker can be just filled with bad beats all the way around, right? Not just on the felt, but bad beats and people. But the way that you've been able to present some of those in such a way to laugh it off is actually like so good for the soul, right? Because a lot of us in poker just love misery. We love bad beat stories, right? We of course
yeah.
love hearing it from everybody, but to, hear it from a livelihood of a place of just being able to laugh it off, I think is really soothing for the soul. So the fact that you actually took my advice and my support towards this, and then you're on it, man, I'm just genuinely proud of you, and I'm excited to see what that's going to be like for people to experience cold deck Chris in its entirety and his livelihood. So
Now that I hear you say it, I hate it. No.
Did you feel it? Did you feel
I'm like, damn, no wonder everyone hates the name. That's terrible. It doesn't roll off the tongue. No, dude, I appreciate that. I mean, like I said, this is something I want to do for a really long time. And not that I say I was scared, but it was just more like I just didn't understand that I could do this, really just turn on the camera and record kind of thing. And you kind of gave me that confidence of like, dude, who cares if it's perfect or polished? Like, does that help? Sure. Yeah, of course. And that'll come, right? That'll come the more that I do this, and the more that I practice and fine tune it. But it's really just about, getting the mic on and talking, just putting the content
yeah.
out there. And I mean, you and I are both pretty fucking unfiltered. So I think like just getting to this point, like from our first time we talked when I was on the ShiftEQ podcast, which we'll talk about in just a second.
Mhm.
That was kind of my first time where I felt really good about being in a format like that, because it
Hmm.
is different. It's very different than being in a commentary booth, than being on stream playing, or like, just having a camera solely focused on you while you're talking can be a little nerve wracking.
Very, very much so. All right. And on top of that too is when you're on this mic, you're being authentic. There's a lot. It's not like you're reading scripts, so you have to fill in a lot of the major points with yourself as a person. And when you're putting yourself out there, you're putting your opinions out there, you're putting your bare face to a camera behind a voice, you're just asking to be judged. You're being asked to be criticized. And so, and let's be realistic here. People are not short of any kind of criticism, because they'll find everything to talk shit about you. So for you
100%.
to put yourself out there, you have to love something about the other side of that criticism that's so worth it to be able to endure it from everybody else and not give a fuck. Right. And I think that once you find that for yourself, whatever that might be, I think ours has always been a knack for providing humor into just things that people would otherwise just fucking think is the worst shit in the world. Or just bringing a livelihood to community over communities that we love. And so, when you find that love, your voice, your passion, your purpose, you got that little voice in your head that says that you should be doing this, and you start pursuing it, bro, it's such a beautiful feeling. And it just, the self-development, because this is episode 3, I think, on
Yep.
your, I mean, bro, I can't wait to see what episode 10 is going to be like, what episode 20 is going to look like, episode
It's going
50.
to be a shit show. Let's be real.
And here's crazy. And here's another thing about podcasts, Chris. Did you know that I believe it's less than 1% of 1% of all podcasts only get to 20 episodes. So if you get past 20 or more episodes, you're automatically in the top 1% of podcasters. It's one of the weirdest participation trophies ever. But
that seems almost unbelievable.
But you know what's crazy is if you think about people, I want to get podcasts, I want to do a podcast, right? A lot of people just I want to talk, but a lot of people talk so that it can get reciprocated, so they could get validated. But if you love what you do, you're just actually trying to spread the awareness, spread the passion, and you don't need that external validation. But I'm only bringing that up because a lot of people only get into podcasting with the hopes of getting validated. But if you're not speaking from a pure intention or with your true self, you're going to find that superficiality dies away real quickly, and so will your channel, right? So yeah, man, I'm excited to see where this grows for you.
Dude, I appreciate that. Seriously. And I want to do kind of like what Joe Rogan does, where he has repeat guests. He'll have a first interview and then a second interview. And it's it's fun because you get to catch up and follow up with those people and see, what did they do the last time they were on, or maybe they have something going on in their lives that makes it more interesting to have them on, right? That kind of thing. So,
right.
But let's talk about you now. Enough about me. Enough about powdering my balls. Let's talk about you, Allen. Okay, so why don't we talk about? And obviously, this is a poker related podcast, but I want to get into the fitness stuff as well, because I think that does play a big part of the game, at least now, right? The old adage was the fat, out of shape guy sitting at the table grinding his ass off for 18 hours a day. Those guys seem to have disappeared, and you have this new age player, primarily Euros, that really care about their health and their overall vitality, I guess you could say, right? They look healthier, they're good looking, they're ripped, they eat healthy, they talk about meditation and rest and lifting and cardio. It's a different time. It's I wasn't used to hearing that even 10 years ago, 8 years ago. It seems like it's kind of taken over more recently, but tell me, how did you get into the game?
Get into the game of working out and
no, of poker first. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what started you off on that journey.
So what got me into poker is watching the old WPT reruns on the Travel Channel when I was growing up. I was watching that with my dad, and who were the commentators? Not Norman Chow.
It was Vince Van Patten and Mike Sexton.
Yes, rest in peace, Mike Sexton. But seeing the game, I was always drawn to games that are built off of merit, in the sense of you got to be better than the other person. And poker was just one of those things that really intrigued me. The fact that you can level and leverage other people, as well as getting a monetary benefit out of it. And then hearing, Vince Patten and Mike Sexton get all excited between, flop, turn, river. Oh, look at the percentages. Oh, he couldn't believe it. And look at it as a bluff, it just, man, there were so many just different strategies and approaches to poker. And then also it was the one thing that I can compete with my dad in. And because, we're a lot of years different, but it's the one where, we can talk and we can talk about hands. We can be excited over the river. And it's like one of those things that I got to really build a relationship with my dad on. And I think that's kind of what it was. But then it just kind of kept growing from there. I joined the military, and the military didn't have too much time off. And when I was stationed in South Carolina, there aren't really any casinos. So I started, throwing or hosting poker tournaments, and I started winning a lot of those. And so I think just like anybody else that gets on a poker run, you're like, oh, I could do this. I could do this for the rest of my life. Right. I would have fucking, Vegas
I'm never
in the
gonna
fucking
lose
garage.
Yeah, exactly.
With one $20 house game tournament. And next thing you know, I think I'm in the fucking main event, right? But
It's ridiculous how good that does feel, though. Let's be real. We've all been there.
Yes. Like there's no better feeling than like playing against someone from work or in your division that just thinks they're arrogant, they're all better than everybody, and you just fucking check raise the shit out of every street and stack them with the cold fucking nuts. I don't think there's a game that has that kind of feel. I don't think there is at all.
Not that I can think of.
No. And then just, I started playing cash games when I moved to San Diego. That built my even more of a curiosity to see if I can go to Vegas. And I got stationed in Vegas for the last 3.5 years of my Navy career. Started playing cash games, was kind of a semi grinder, and then just started meeting people in the community. And, that's kind of like my whole poker story. And I still love it. I still love it to death. I tried playing full time for a little bit and realized I don't have the money management skills or the discipline that goes along with trying to grind for your bills and
most
stuff.
Don't. Yeah, most people don't.
No. And then it sucks trying to like, man, if I lose this, if this bluff doesn't go through, I don't know how I'm going to pay for my car note. That's a shitty feeling too. So, but poker is still obviously near dear in my heart. But to circle around, long story short, the beginning is high school, Travel Channel, and I guess my love for the game just kept growing over the years.
Dude, when you said Travel Channel, like, and for some of you guys who are listening, I guarantee you're gonna be like, what? WPT was on the Travel Channel? Like, it almost sounds fake. Like, why of all channels, why would that be on the Travel Channel? But like, that was when I first got exposed to it, and I still can hear Mike Sexton's voice right now. Right? Do you remember what he says at the end of every episode when they crown the champion? Do you remember? And they're toasting, right? Hold on, with the Amber Bach beer, and because that was one of the title sponsors. And do you know what he says?
I do not remember. I don't.
He goes, I'm going to channel him right now. Hold on. I'm getting goosebumps even just talking about it right now. May your cards be live and your pots be monsters. That's what he says.
We just took a time machine ride back.
Dude, I feel like he was just in me right now. It's kind of weird because it definitely felt tingly as I said it. No, that was his line. And honestly, that was kind of the early days for me too. It was like the same time as you had ESPN, constantly doing marathons of the World Series of Poker coverage. And there really wasn't any other poker on TV really at that time. Right. It was WPT, World Series of Poker. And then maybe you had like these weird one-offs from like Fox Sports where they'd host like a Superstars Invitational, and it was like Phil Locke, Phil Ivey, Phil Hellmuth. I don't know why I said all the Phils all of a sudden.
All the Phils,
yeah. Barry Greenstein, Jennifer Harmon. Like you'd have all these people, and it'd be like a sit and go for, I think it wasn't like a ton of money, but like, all right, they're playing for $200,000, and it's like, cool, that's awesome, right? And I'd be glued to that. But WPT was kind of the one where I was like, they're doing it different. They're making this feel like a sporting event. There's a crowd there. There's these lights there. It just felt very different. And my early memory of watching it and being like enthralled by it was one of the first times Phil Ivey played. I think it was Commerce. It was the LA Poker Classic, the LAPC. And God, what a time that was. I mean, it was just like, watching him play, and I go online and try and mimic the same moves and just get absolutely crushed, right? Because you're not Phil Ivey. And like that's just something I'm like kind of going down memory lane here, but that's awesome. That's pretty badass. Tell me, you talk about like the military. I feel like every military person I talk to, when
Mhm.
you're stationed somewhere, poker games just kind of break out. Maybe not everyone knows how to play very well, but like
Right.
there's a deck of cards somewhere in every ship, station, base, right? I mean, at least that's what I'm hearing. I didn't
Mhm.
personally serve in the military, but like, is that kind of a common thing, or is that not as common?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people play what's the word? What's that? Spades. A lot of people play
Spades.
spades. Spades is a big one. But poker, I think there's a draw to it in general. And for us, like when we're deployed, we're in some of these tax-free zones. We have a little bit of extra cash. We have nowhere to spend it. You know, I feel degenerates are going to degen, right? So
That sounds like a commercial.
degenerates are going to degen, or degens are going to degen.
Yeah, no, just like when you said like, well, we got all this money and we got, we don't have anywhere to spend it. What do we do with all this cash that's tax free? Like, what do we
Yeah.
do? We gamble. That's what we do.
That-
That is what we do. Are you kidding me? We don't even need to have a deck of cards. We're going to find something to degenerate on.
Right. Well, and then on top of that, it's a fun and exciting game. When people get rivered, it gets exciting. People get turned, and it's a very fun. So you have a group of guys that have a really good energy. There's money being thrown around while people are, hey, I just won $1,000 pot off of my quote unquote best friend, and he's still high fiving me. Like there's something about that just draws people in.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, not as fun when there's a shit ton of money on the line, or you're playing in a tournament and you happen to be sat at the same table as
right.
someone you like and don't want to KO out of a tourney. But yes, for the most
Yeah, but
part, high
but
fives.
dude, some of these games though, man, like I remember during my last deployment, it was a 10-month deployment. So, and a lot of it was served in the Middle East. So there was a lot of tax-free zone. We got into a four-handed 1-2 no limit game. And guess how much I cashed out at, Chris?
How much?
8,000
What?
in a four-handed 1-2 no limit game on the ship.
Was the other players handicapped and just donating? Like, I don't
Well,
know if like,
well, that's the thing is when you start going under markers, right? People like, oh, let me get another. Let me get another. And so what
wait, so,
starts
so what? It wasn't actual cash in your hand. It was markers. Is that what you're
It,
saying?
yeah, well, that's the thing is everybody on the ship knows exactly when the next person is getting paid, and everybody knows how to transfer money hand in hand, right? So we had bookies, we had a player pool, we had I think it was every Sunday, we had it in this one specific room that had a code. Like we had a little thing going, that's for sure.
That is absolutely amazing. That's like
Yeah.
honestly amazing.
No, yeah.
Um, what was I going to say? No, I mean, like, so all my family, besides my brother and I, have served in the military. Like, my dad was drafted in Vietnam. My grandfather fought in World War II. Like, we've had a history. My sister was in the Navy for almost a decade, a little over a
Oh
decade. My
wow.
nephew was a Marine for 8 years. Like, they've all served in the military in some sort. So, like, I have a ton of respect. Thank you for your service. I think it's something that I kind of wish I had done, because I
Hmm.
feel like there's just lessons you learn in the military that you don't learn in everyday civilian life, right?
Yeah.
Like people say like, "Oh, like how hard could it be doing this?" It's like you're going to get a wake up call, like it's
Yeah.
you're doing something that's bigger than yourself. And I think that is incredibly noble and important for people to do. Whether it be serving in the
Mm.
military or doing charity work, like you have to do something that is bigger than yourself. And not to get all philosophical or emotional on this podcast, but I just think it's
Mhm.
something that like I've been blessed to be able to do things and give back in a different way that I feel, you know, it's fulfilling. And I want to do that in poker. I think that's something that I think Barry Greenstein used to give 1% or 2% of his winnings, right? Anything he won, he would donate to charity. I think that's really honorable, because I think
That's
it's
awesome.
something that if you're making all this money, and yes, it's a skill game. There's some luck involved, etc. But if you're a consistent winner and you're not trying to do some kind of good with that, I think you're missing the boat. I think you're missing something. I think there's something that could come from that. Right. So,
Yeah. I think you should be giving back, but it's always interesting to hear the perspective of people that don't, and not to discredit it, not to say I agree with it, but I know that everybody's on their own respective journey, their own respective approach. Yeah. I mean, it makes you wonder, well, how can you win 10 million and not give like anything back at all? But it just makes you wonder why.
Sure. And I'm not just talking about tipping the dealer, right? Like, that's
no,
always the discussion. That's always the discussion. It's like, I am donating. I am giving money back. I'm don't tipping the dealer. That's not charity work. Okay. Like that's bullshit. But that's funny because that's a controversial topic, is like, what does the main event champion tip the dealer when he wins? Right. And I think they share that tip, but I've heard upwards of like $150,000 from the main event winner. Like, I've heard some ridiculous numbers. I don't know if anybody listening, you guys can verify that, maybe DM me, but like I've heard some really ridiculous numbers, but someone said it should be 10%. I'm like, 10%. If you win 10 million, you're dropping
so it's
a
like
million.
$1 million.
You're dropping $1 million. But then I'm thinking, does that get taxed? Are you taxed on that million?
What's the thumb rule for a bad beat jackpot? What's that thumb rule?
What, as far as tipping
the dealer? Right.
I would have to say it's something. Let's say the bad beat is 100,000. I would say if you're not tipping the dealer at least, let's say 2.5 to 3%, like you're just a piece of shit, right? Like that's something that, sorry, give me 1 second. We're gonna have to edit this out because my phone is blowing up. So I apologize, but okay. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I got to respond to this, unfortunately.
Well, you shouldn't be so popular, Chris. This is your fault.
It's the wife. They're right outside the door, and I told them not to disturb the recording, but they still decided to disturb the recording. So we'll find a way to edit that out. We'll find a way to.
They take priority, bud. They take priority. That's for sure.
They definitely take priority, 100%. Especially when the wife's pregnant, right? That's the ultimate priority. That's the ultimate priority.
Yeah,
that's a crazy feeling.
Oh, God, I'm so excited for you, brother. I am so excited.
I'm excited for 1,000 different reasons, but I think it's too, like, I've been very lucky that I've been able to have practice with the most amazing stepdaughter that I don't even consider a stepdaughter. Like that, she calls me dad. I tell people that's my daughter. Like, I've literally watched her grow up since she was 3 years old. And so it's 7.5 years later. Like we're still here. Like she's a big piece of my life. It's something that I feel very lucky to be called dad, right? Because you have to earn it. I know that people go, oh, you have a kid, you're the dad, but like I still think you have to earn it. There's a lot of shitty fathers out there, right? Like I've been around some, and I've always told myself that I'm going to work as hard as I can not to be like that, right? I want to work as hard as I can to be the shining example. Am I perfect? No, nobody's perfect, right? I make a shit ton of mistakes, and I do things that maybe isn't for the best, but I'm trying. And that's, I think, the most important thing. As long as you have the good intentions, a good heart, that's all that really matters, right?
Yeah, brother. Yeah, that's beautiful. No. I think that was my favorite moment from your guys' wedding. When you had the father-daughter dance. God, that hit the feels, bro. Like it definitely hit the feels. And yeah, Chris, I'm excited for you to take that venture. I know you have one of the purest hearts, and you're a phenomenal man, inside and out. So
let me tell you, that was not planned to get that emotional. Like, I didn't know the song that well. I didn't know kind of how the reaction was going to be, but all I can hear as I'm dancing with my daughter, like the sniffles, you just hear constant, like,
oh yeah.
Like the whole time. Like, it was just, it was a magical moment, and something that, people say, oh, cherish every moment of your wedding because it goes by so fast. It was over in the blink of an eye. Like, I get out there, my heart's pounding, during the actual ceremony, and then I blink and we're dancing and having the time of our lives. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, show's over, everyone go home. And you're like, what? We just started. What do you mean it's 11 o'clock? Like it was just 4:30, like 10 minutes ago. What just
Yeah,
happened? So I know anyone who gets married or has been married definitely knows that exact feeling. That's everyone warned me. That's what it'd be like. And I'm like, no, you're just an idiot. Don't, it doesn't like, I'm going to cherish every second. No, it went by way too fast. If I could do it all over again, I would definitely. Not the cost,
dude.
but definitely.
Beautiful venue too, by the way.
Oh man, that was all. That was the wife. She picked it all out. It was like one of those moments where we looked at like 5 or 6 different places. And we're like, no, nah, it doesn't feel right. Not quite the fit. They didn't have the things we wanted. We walked into that venue. I mean, San Clemente, California. Anyone who knows Orange County, it's a fairly beautiful place. But Southern Orange County, South Orange County, it's like the last frontier of California.
The
It's
last
beautiful.
frontier.
It is like there's not a ton of homeless, and it's beautiful, and I mean it's incredibly expensive to be around and live, but I mean that
Right.
venue was spectacular. So it's
It
pretty
was.
dope. It's
It
pretty
was.
awesome. All right, enough of the mushy shit. Let's get back to cards. Let's
I
get
mean,
back to cards.
this is the thing is, bro. We're actually friends. Like you're my brother. So
I know.
it's how do we not talk about personal things? Like we usually just talk about personal things. So
This is what it'll be like. This is what it'll be like. All that like I definitely appreciate you so much as a friend, dude, because we've been through a lot together over the years. Maybe someday we'll have a podcast that goes over all the craziness in our lives. But overall, that's something that is so hard to find in poker is like
bro,
really good dedicated people, and everyone has like a tribe. You notice even in the what do you call it, the high roller circuit, they have like little what do you call them, cliques, or like whether
right?
they study from or they just hang out with, right? And I've noticed that in like the high roller circuit, everyone kind of knows each other, but there's very much like little pockets where you could tell they're individuals, but they probably have people they go to and talk hands with and share stories with, and bad beat stories, and look at this guy, he's a fish, and etc. But like you and I, we connected at first during just the game, and then it just became like we realized we're the same people, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that's just so hard to find. Like there was a small group of us, me, you, Chad, Stu, Brian, Mark. I feel like I'm
Mark.
forgetting some people, but like all those people, they became family. Like
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
something that I still talk to a majority of those guys today. We all do, right? And it's like, even though maybe we won't talk every day, it's like we never left. Like that's the
Right.
crazy thing.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing. I still remember the WSOP where we opened a 4-8 limit Omaha at the damn, what's that casino?
The
Orleans.
Orleans.
The Orleans.
Good
And
God.
we started it and we all bought in for like 1,000 plus in chips. The $1 chips 4-8 limit. And
I thought they were $2 chips. I'll have to
there
look, but regardless,
it was ridiculous,
it was
insane.
stupid.
And it was
I still have
hilarious.
pictures of the stacks.
Oh, it's the greatest like chip porn of all time of all of our stacks. And it's funny when we started this game, then this list went to like 40 plus, and people were trying to get into the game at like $20 a hand. Like they had $20, 20 total dollars when everybody else has like thousands on the other end, and still just trying to play into this game. But I'm saying that to say this, I just thought like, that kind of like summarized how much fun we were having, how much we just enjoyed each other's time, that like the shenanigans that we did. And honestly, that's what I loved about the poker community the most is we're this like fun, degenerate kind of outcast that all get that we are, but we don't mind it because it's a game that we love. And to be able to, I've had a lot of best friends. I mean, a lot of where I'm at today is because of poker and the relationships I made in poker. So it's just a great game that just is a great medium to meet great people for sure.
I could not agree more. And I think it's funny because like I don't even personally use the relationships, the connections enough like I probably should be, especially
Mhm.
coming from like a sales and marketing background traditionally, like with my like day job, I guess you could say, my career. It's like people use golf to network with people, right? You go golfing, and everyone's terrible, but you're having a good time. Maybe you have the one guy who thinks he's fucking Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy, and he's out there shooting a 79 or an 80, and you're like, bro, like, how did you get so good? But poker, it's like anybody can win. You don't have to be Phil Ivey to go out there and have a great time with your friends and
Mhm.
bullshit, and you know what I mean? And I think it honestly, it depends on who you're playing with, but when it's like
Right.
a fun home game with your homies, God, that's a really hard thing to beat. Like, it's so much fun. And then on top of that, when you go to card rooms and you don't know who you're sitting next to. I've sat next to celebrities, I've sat next to pro athletes, and that's just not on stream, just like casually in Vegas, casually in LA. You
Right.
never know who you're going to sit down next to. I've sat next to owners of major businesses and CEOs and people who were on reality shows and like, and then sometimes you'll just meet someone who potentially could be a customer for your business, and it's just happens that way. So I think that's something that is incredibly overlooked, is the networking capability of it. And then to your point, sometimes you can make lifelong friends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's just, yeah, poker, such a fun everything, industry wise, community wise. It's such a great everything. That's for sure.
Speaking of great everythings, please tell me about ShiftEQ. Let's talk about it's not even just like a podcast.
Mhm.
It's morphed into this incredible brand. So why don't you tell the public a little bit about how that even came to be?
Oh man, that's I appreciate this question a lot, by the way. There's definitely a lot to unfold here, but I'll try to keep it as condensed as possible. So pretty much for me, the version that I was during our Instagram poker times, I was living in Vegas, I was a bachelor, drinking all the time, eating a lot of processed foods,
Amen.
not um and I think people that are very well of the poker world can find themselves in a really tough and interesting schedule, especially in Vegas, consuming a lot of alcohol, consuming a lot of food, putting yourself into the cycle of constantly doing the same things over again. And it's tough to think that you're doing something wrong, especially when you're consistently winning, right? Well, yeah, I'm getting lit and I'm eating all this food and getting fat, but look at, I'm pulling in 609 and pulling 809, 900 a night. Like, obviously what I'm doing has to be okay. And then all of a sudden you get into years later where you're getting bad beats, but you still haven't stopped your drinking. You still haven't stopped your eating.
It's
Um,
increased.
it has. And back in, like, right after COVID, I remember I had like the worst hangover in my life. I went to a poker game. I went to a private poker game, started drinking, and then drinking led to other shenanigans. And then the next thing I know, I'm waking up at 11 p.m. the next day after, not realizing how the fuck I got home, not understanding anything about what happened with my life. All I know that I had an issue, I had a problem. I was running away from a lot of issues that I wasn't taking on, but instead I was deflecting them and I was acting like they didn't exist. From that moment on, I decided to figure out what that was about me that hated me, that was having to feel like I had to drink, that made me feel like I constantly had to eat all this crap food, that constantly didn't make me feel the way I optimally was. And a lot of that inner work was honestly dealing with the stories that I told myself. I went through being orphaned. I was in the military. I went through a really tough divorce. Um, and instead of working through these issues, these challenges I had with my life, I found out that I was telling a story of why I didn't have to work through it. And a lot of that was masking, was through the drinking and through the partying and through everything else. From that moment, I started working on myself. I started like, because, even though I can be completely justified in being a degenerate alcoholic that's putting myself through 24-hour comas, that's not how I wanted to be with my life. That's not how I wanted to show up. So that year, I signed up for a marathon and signed up for a national bodybuilding competition. And in the process of pursuing those challenges, not only did it deal with the working out, deal with the eating, putting down the booze, but once you start pursuing this higher version of yourself, life throws its challenges at you and starts kind of making sure that your higher version is what you really want. And all of that came through a lot of working through the inner voices in my head, the inner projections that I had, like I told you, the stories that I told myself. And once I got done with the marathon and once I got done with the competition, my entire life changed. I had this entire 6-month period of eating better, not drinking as much, as well as reframing how I view myself. And it just literally changed my life. And since then, my finances have been better. My relationships and my lives have been better. I physically, mentally, and emotionally have shown up in such a different light. And why ShiftEQ exists is because I see a lot of the challenges that I went through of self-worth, self-doubt, loneliness, depression, and I see people masking it all the time. And although I think that you should be using something with that energy, I think that instead of masking yourself, you can shift how you view yourself, you view your self-beliefs, view the stories that you tell yourself, and shift them into using that as a story to become the best version of you. So I'm not saying that what you have to do is do a bodybuilding competition or what you got to do is do a marathon, but these are some challenges that I wanted to overcome as well as accomplish. And ever since then, just the notion of prioritizing myself and going after goals has just been the most life-changing thing. And so my entire brand and my entire podcast is to highlight these stories as well as encourage and inspire other people to look within themselves, get over their own limiting stories, and go after the higher version that they all know that they're capable of.
Wow. That was incredibly well said, first of all, because I didn't even know some of that stuff. I mean, some of it I did, and I like how you, what did you call it? Shenanigans? You guys can all imagine what extra shenanigans are. We've all played some of those private home games, so we know what kind of shenanigans goes on.
Oh my God.
But no, I mean, I think that's incredibly well said because, I think it's part of getting older too. It's like you just go, what do I want for my life? Like, yeah, living the bachelor life when you're young and you have no responsibilities and, you can be very, what I call it, mobile, right? You're not glued to one spot. I can't even imagine what it was like, being in the military and like playing poker and being moved around, shipped to different stations and things like that. Like what a wild life that is, like truly, like if you really think about it. I have a lot of friends who've had parents in the military and some of them are like, yeah, by the time I was 15 I lived in 25 different places around the country. I'm like, what? Or around the world, right? They're like, we didn't even stay in the US. So that's pretty wild. But like to wake up and be like, I want more for myself. And I think in you metamorphosizing, is that a word? Metamorphing with you going through this evolution of yourself, it's also inspired countless other people. And I think like your podcast definitely touches on that. But what I really like about it too is the incredibly special way that you allow people to be their authentic self on there. Like that to me is the most impressive part about that. Because like a lot of podcasts I listen to hundreds of different types of podcasts every week. I'm constantly listening to stuff in the car, when I'm working out, whatever. And sometimes you can tell when someone's not totally being themselves, like, and maybe it's because it's their first time speaking with a microphone in their face or on camera or whatever, right? But they're not truly being themselves. And I notice your podcast has this incredible way of like, maybe the first few minutes people are a little nervous and then like you calm them down and then they open up and you start recording gold. And I've had a really good time listening to your podcast personally. If you guys haven't listened to it or don't know where it is, where can they find it? Where can they find ShiftEQ?
It's ShiftEQ Podcast, which if you're watching, it's in this handle, like right here. And it's on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. That's where you could find it.
Beautiful. Awesome. Definitely check it out, guys. If you're not listening to it, it's not just about fitness. It's a bunch of different topics. It's about just being a human being in the world. It's pretty awesome. So
Yeah.
that's
There's
badass.
there's definitely still a lot of working out in there though, guys. Like that, and that's the thing is, right? Like I think that health isn't just like physical. I think a lot of the physical is pushed with your mental and your emotional. There's a lot. I mean, obesity is climbing at an extreme rate. And I don't know of anybody in this world that says, I don't want to like what I see in the mirror. So there's some kind of an epidemic of self-depreciation that we're really experiencing right now. And that's another issue that I love to tackle with what I do. Like if you start eating better, you start working out, and you start feeling and looking better, that in itself helps your mental and emotional. I think that's a lot of the reason why what you just spoke about earlier, which is the Euros kind of taking over with their good looking and great physiques. I don't think it's any wonder as to why they're also happen to be in shape. Like I think they definitely all go hand in hand. I'd argue some of those skinnier Euros, and no offense to a couple of the people that are in poker, on the American side of past WSOP winners. I'm just going to leave it at that. And I'll let you guys fill in the blank.
They're fucking listening anyways. Let's be real.
That's true. It's true. Like,
anyone's even listening to this podcast at this point.
But you know what I mean, and yeah, so I definitely, it is about life, but there's also a lot of great workout eating advice and why you should be doing that to show up better in your life overall, outside of just looking better. That's for sure.
That I definitely agree with. And you said something that kind of rung in my head here is poker being such a mental game. Why wouldn't you exercise to have blood flow go to your brain faster, more efficiently, to make better decisions? Like it sounds so stupid, and I literally sound like an ad as I'm saying this, but it does go hand in hand. If I notice when I do cardio in the morning, when I'm like eating well, I don't have brain fog. I don't have this like, what do I do? Or what did the fucking solver say? Like I'm not trying to process things as hard as it normally is when I don't do those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So maybe these fucking Euro bots are onto something. Maybe they really are. They figured out the code, right? They cracked the code of what it takes to be a consistently successful poker player, which there really are so few, to be really honest. But that they seem to have that code cracked.
Yeah. And also, like, let me add to that too, is you also want to play poker without any of your emotions. Like you can get your aces cracked 3 times in a fucking row and make you feel a certain way. And sometimes if you're so consumed with being so upset that you lost, you might not see the whole picture that you have played those respective hands, right? So that's maybe, after the 3rd time your aces got cracked, like, fuck this, whatever. But did you play it right? Did you raise pre-flop? Are you one of those stupid guys that try to limp 3-bet from the early position and then all of a sudden you go 9 ways to a flop? Like
hey, that was solver approved.
that's solving.
That move, that limp was solver approved, guys.
Yeah, fuck, that's stupid as hell. Oh my god. You always see the
what are your thoughts on that? Like
the limp 3-bets or
no.
I think they're terrible. It's always funny too because you see them. But you see it too because they put it and they make it all like suspicious. Like, you won't raise me. It's so fucking obvious the way they do it too.
It's so obvious. It's so bad. Like they try and be so fucking sly with it, and they're not.
Right.
I meant more of like this. And I feel like the tide is finally shifting a little bit, but we're still very much in the realm of, I'm going to see what the solver says. I'm going to see what GTO wizard says. I'm going to see what HRC says. Like those tools. And I don't get me wrong, I'm using them. Everyone's using them, right? And the benefit to me is the ability to practice on those pieces of software, like the trainers, that changed the game for me. When I started
Mhm.
using the trainers in those sites, that's where I started to really understand, like, oh, I'm fucking up here. Like
Mm,
I'm losing chips here where I shouldn't be. Like I have a leak,
right.
and it made me identify that. But I feel like some people lean too heavy on the solvers,
I do too.
and it's created this weird microcosm of, well, if you're not doing it, you're a fish, but the average player isn't doing it, right? The recreational player isn't really reading solvers or looking at I mean, who the fuck is going to spend $100 a month on GTO Wiz if you're not a serious player,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But apparently, if I don't use it, I'm a fucking fish, right?
Yeah.
To the pros. So it's like I just feel like there's too much information out there pushing people in the wrong direction. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that overall? I maybe I'm wrong.
I think there's an element to poker that we're all forgetting here, which is we're all human beings playing against other human beings. And you can't measure a human's actions or inactions based off of numbers, solvers, or probabilities. Like you can to some extent, right? But you've been at a poker table where you got this fucking loose cannon of a drunk motherfucker that is just damn near going all in every other hand. And you could try to put that into solvers, but bro, I mean, when you're playing for buy-ins at a time, sometimes for each individual hand, like it's kind of hard to find a solver in that. And I'm not, obviously that's an extreme example, but for me, and maybe this is just a mid to low stakes kind of person, because that's the only stakes I play now. But I like to pay attention to the table because regardless, I think I take a very basic strategy and equitable approach on the pre-flop. But in some spots that they tell you to raise, I might limp just based off of the fact that like there's like 8 limps before me or 3 limps before me. And if I raise, I might lose more value in the long run because if I don't see a flop and I can't play that, then I can't make more money in the long. I mean, there's
Mhm.
so many various situations about human play that's just not accounted for in solvers that I think that when you start treating people like their numbers and what they should and shouldn't do based off of a computer program, I think you start boxing yourself in from actually being a big overall well-rounded poker player. That makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I kind of have a question for you because this is something I'm thinking about as I'm talking about it.
Okay.
But what would you prefer, or what feels better? Pulling off a huge bluff for a giant pot,
Mm-hmm.
or that sick pump after a sick workout? What's a better feeling?
Ooh, nah. I definitely the sick bluff. Sick bluff is for sure. That
I-
there's no ifs ands or buts. No
no,
ifs ands or buts.
you know how
You
I
owe.
knew, you know how I knew you were going to say that?
Uh-huh.
Because anyone listening that's ever done that
Mm-hmm.
knows the adrenaline rush you go through, right? You have your heartbeat in your neck the entire time. And then when
Right,
that guy or gal folds their cards, it's an adrenaline dump. And
bro.
I swear, I look down and I have like, you'll have like your hair standing up and your veins pop. Like, I feel like you get a pump from that.
Right. Well, that's like, bro, it's like those old classic scenarios where like you're playing like 7-8 suited and you get like a 6-10 like blank flop, but the 6-10 are also suited. So you have like this freaking or 6-9 suited, right? So you have an open-ended straight flush draw and you're just fucking check raising as you flop the set and you're barreling turn and barreling fucking river. Who cares if you have like 50 some odd percent equity on the flop? You don't hit by the river, but you're fucking barreling to Jesus because it's gonna fucking happen no matter what. And I think that feeling of from the fucking flop and get go, you're like, I'm going with this. I don't give a fuck. And then you create a good enough story to own the other person's soul by the river for a good money amount. Bro, there is
Oh, that's
no feeling in the fucking world than that.
like the best feeling is the look on their face when they know you should have never been in the hand to begin with. And they literally put so much money in the pot, they felt like it was theirs. Like that is the best feeling. I cannot agree with you more. I actually have a quick story I want to share that as you talked about that, I
Okay.
remember this was years ago. I want to say this was maybe a decade ago, and I'm at Hawaiian Gardens, now known as the Gardens, right?
Mm.
HGC, or HG as most people call it. And I'm playing at either a 1-2 or a 2-3 table. I can't quite remember the exact stakes, but I'll never forget the guy that I was playing against and what happened. We're playing
Okay.
all night. This guy could have looked like he was in Beethoven the musical. Like, he looked like a Renaissance European, like long hair, little bald in front, and he wore this really big leather jacket that was like dark brown. I'll never forget this guy. And he spoke English, but he had like kind of an accent to it. And we're playing all night. We're trading pots. I mean, we must have been playing for at least 6 or 7 hours at this point. And I remember I'm like really tired. It's probably 2, 3, maybe 4 a.m. It's late. It's like really
Fuck
late.
yes.
I'm not supposed to be there anymore. Okay. And I just said, you know what? I'm gonna no matter what I get, I'm playing against this guy, and I'm gonna pull off a huge bluff. Okay.
Mhm.
So I get dealt deuce 4 suited, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going with this. And I can't wait to show him. I can't wait to show him. Okay. So so I don't want to bore you with too much of the hand history, but I'll explain it like this. He's sitting directly to my right. Okay. He's sitting right next to me. Okay. I'm in seat 6. He's in seat 5, like right next to me. We're both facing the dealer. And he raises 3 or 4x. I 3-bet him like big. I want to say $20. And he just kind of looks at me and flat calls. And the flop comes deuce, deuce, 10. Okay. I'll never forget this. I have deuce 4. Okay. He leads out, and I tank for almost a minute and call. Okay. I don't remember the exact amounts, but it was definitely at least 50% pot. Turn comes a total blank. I want to say it was like an ace of clubs. Like, it was a
Mhm.
big card, but it was a blank in my opinion. Like, it just didn't feel like he was doing this with an ace. I felt like he was doing this with kings or queen. Like, he had a big hand, but it wasn't aces. Because knowing him, he would have raised more. He would have probably gone all in pre-flop. Like, that's just kind of the way he was playing.
Right.
So turn comes like an ace of clubs. He checks to me, and I check back. Now he's really in the blender. He takes a look at me and is like, this guy calls the flop, but then checks the turn. Like, what's going on? The river comes a 4. Okay. I have the boat.
Right.
He bets like 150. He over bets the pot so grotesquely, it's laughable. Like, if anyone was actually paying attention, which everyone was half asleep at the table at this point,
Right.
there might have been it be an old man coffee just starting his day. Like, it was that's how late it was. Okay. He bets out for like $150. I probably have about 700, 600 in front of me effective. And I immediately rip all in.
Mhm.
And he fucking slams his hands down on the table and is like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, what? You don't do this shit all night. You don't, I don't understand what's going on. Like, he's losing his mind. He tanks for, I swear to God, it was almost 7 minutes, 8 minutes. Okay. This is the longest at HG. They don't tolerate that kind of shit. But this dealer was with us for a while. It's late. It's like the sun's coming up. This is a huge pot. Okay. We've been playing each other all night. And he's like, I haven't. So he goes, I know you're a good player. I don't think you would do this with just bullshit, but I have a hand. I have a hand. He kept saying this. I have a hand. I don't know if I can fold. I don't know if I'm good enough to fold. And he must have talked to himself for an extra 2 minutes at this point. He's like, but you call the flop, but then you don't bet the turn and you check. And I just like, I don't know. And then I'm trying not to laugh at this point because I know once he calls, he's going to be furious. I know once he calls, he's leading himself to a call. Okay. Once
Right.
he calls, he's going to be furious. Finally makes the call, and I turn my hand over, and I almost put my hand over my mouth to stop myself from laughing. Okay. I'm borderline in holding back tears from laughing. And he gets up and is like, fucking kidding me. Like, fucking kidding me. Fucking kidding me. You 2-4, deuce 4. You hit, like, you're fucking kidding me. Like, he got up, and he had me covered. It was a big pot, definitely over
Uh-huh.
$1,000 pot. He gets up collects his chips, and I was playing pretty regularly at this point. I never saw him again. Ever.
Dude.
Never saw this guy again. And as I'm
Man.
raking in the chips, the dealer's laughing. The dealer's laughing while I'm scooping up this massive pot. And I couldn't believe it. First of all, I couldn't believe he called.
Right.
Guess what he called with?
What?
Jack 10.
Well, maybe his solver told him that he should have called.
This was pre-solvers. This was pre-solvers. That shit, pre-AI. None of this shit existed. I could not believe he was I said, this guy completely lost his mind, or this is the shit he's been playing with. And I left money on the table that night. I should have had a lot more money from him than that hand. Like that just blew me away. Anyways, I'll never forget that as long as I live. That's like one of the few hands that I won that I remember. You remember all the losers for sure, but that was one that I remember very well. That was a winner. Wild. It was wild.
Man,
wild.
You always want to know what's in their mind that says they got a call. I just want to know. You know what I mean? It's a crazy, insane call, and clearly it's not correct. But I want to know how you got to the point where you convinced yourself it's correct. That's all. Curious.
I don't know. But the fact that he took so long made the whole thing that much funnier. Like he pondered his whole life at that point. Like he just like, how did I get into this situation? How did I get here? And trust me, he was playing pretty well, at least for the most part, all night. He never lost money. He was playing on one buy-in. He built his stack. He was doing very well, and I ruined his entire fucking evening. That was the best part of that.
Well, and into the next day.
Bro, he never came back.
Well, but I'm just saying, those are the worst, where you have a long DJ night and you're up till 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. and you get fucking stacked in your last hand like that. And it's also worse when the only reason why you're there is because you're trying to come back from a huge loss in the beginning and you get yourself close to even again and then you fucking lose again. Like that's the fucking worst.
The whole drive home, you're literally like, God, I'm so fucking stupid. Like, why do I play this game? Like, save your money, Brett. Save your money.
Bro.
Why are you spending it on this dumb game, this bullshit?
I've always said it that if you don't ever take one of those drives home where you don't feel like jumping off the road, like you probably didn't play hard enough. Like, and I know that sounds terrible, but it's the
driving
honest
onto the on-ramp too fast. I'm probably cutting cars off, getting into an accident. Like it's
Oh, you think you got a bad beat? Imagine getting your aces cracked when the solvers told me to call. I was kidding.
I'll say this about solvers. My whole thing is I don't mind them as long as you're not using them in the card room, at a tournament table, at a cash game table,
at the main
event, World Series of Poker main event.
Oh my God.
On television. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody says. There is enough picture evidence that shows that Tamayo's rail was using a solver of some kind. They were using charts. Okay. And a chart's a solver. Don't get that. Someone goes, oh, push fold chart. That's not a solver. That's the first iteration of a solver. Yes, that is a solver. We solved where you should shove and where you should fold. We solved it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That chart is a solver. Anyways, they had that shit up on a computer at the rail. I just don't think it should be allowed, period. I don't think they should allow phones, right? We've played on streams, no cell phones, no iPads, no earpieces, no nothing. Why would it be any different on the biggest stage in poker?
Yeah. I don't know. What did the WSOP say in lieu of that?
They haven't made a statement. We're 3 months. What is it? 2 months now? There's no statement.
Wow.
There's zero mention of it. They're trying to like make it disappear.
Insane to me.
My hope is with GG Poker buying them out, right? That they are going to make a very clear stance on this. They're going to come out and say, you get caught with a solver at the table or your laptop at the table or anything, which by the way, this is going to upset a lot of people. What I'm about to say is there's going to be a very large consortium of players who are going to message me and say, you're a fucking idiot. I don't believe players should be allowed to multi-table in a live tournament anywhere, period. You should not have your phone. You should not have a laptop at a table. Okay. I don't care if you're a multi-table king or a queen. I don't care. It's disrespectful to the other players. It's distracting. And honestly, for anyone who says that they're fine playing both, they're not actually concentrating on what's happening around them. Okay. So my opinion is to prevent any future issues from anyone using solvers or getting coaching at the table, etc. No cell phones, no headsets, no headphones, no laptops, nothing. If you're caught with it they should have designated areas where you could use your phone. If it's an emergency, get up and go use your phone. But if it's not, and you're just on Twitter or Instagram being a fucking idiot, you should be penalized. It's a 1-round penalty. And then if you do it again, your chips are collected, hit the showers, have a nice day.
Oh man. I don't think that's, I agree with you. I just don't think it's humanly possible with the way people are damn near hardwired with like ADD and their constant need to have something being stimulated. I can't imagine a poker table with 0 phones, like nothing, and just people having to pay attention and sit there.
They do it in chess.
Yeah, but I think chess actually requires some kind of discipline. Not to say that poker doesn't, but
Are we not talking about the same thing here?
I don't know. I can't imagine. Well, I think with chess, you kind of have to, it's one-on-one. So you have to constantly pay attention to what the other person is doing to be aware of what game flow is. But with poker, I agree. You could just fold and disconnect and not have to pay attention.
No, I agree. I agree. I just think there needs to be some stance on it. Someone needs to come out. I'm putting myself out there, right? I very much realize not everyone's going to agree with what I said. I don't care. That's not the point. Like, I have an opinion that I'm trying to help grow the game, and me like acting like I'm somebody fucking special. But like, I feel the growth is dependent on recreational players finding the game. If I turn on the television and I see a bunch of people on a laptop getting coached on what to do between hands, I'm not playing that game anymore.
Yeah.
I'm no longer interested.
I can see that. I can see that.
It looks bad. It's like, because someone tried to argue with me in a comment section somewhere, and they're like, oh, well, you're just saying like, oh, okay, they get coaching in football, they get coaching in baseball, they get signals from their dugout. I'm like, we're not talking about baseball. We're not talking about that. It's a completely different situation. You still have to go out and perform, right? And there's still rules against stealing signals. There's still rules about doing things in the middle of play, right? In the NFL, they have communications in their headset. Those turn off with 10 seconds left on the play clock, right? The minute the ball snapped, the communication is supposed to be turned off, right? So they're not being helped.
Yeah, I got poker player. I got to play devil's advocate here. I kind of get where it's so interesting, because you had me all the way until you said the sports, because what people do, they make halftime adjustments, right? Like, just like watching my Jags, we're up 14-0, and then the Dolphins made adjustments, and now all of a sudden they won the game, right? I think there's some merit to be had to get a hand history and see how your opponent is playing, especially when you're heads up at a main event. I think there's actually room for that. Now that I'm really thinking about it, bro, and I might be just, oh my God, here we go with the controversy, because I know we're on two different ends of this.
I can't wait.
I think there is now, dude. Yeah, now I'm talking about it. I think there's some merit to because the event is televised. You have this opportunity to get this information that everybody else has. Why not use it to your advantage during breaks and kind of see how your opponent's playing? But then, because the other opponent also has the same ability to adjust to you. So it's not, I don't, and I think that's the great thing about games and strategies and playing for the long run. Like, obviously the way that you play heads up isn't the same way you play nine-handed. So
I don't disagree with that. Let me rephrase what I'm saying then too, because I'm not saying like, oh, you can never have a cell phone. You can never. That's not truly what I mean. What I just mean is, like, if you're in play, it's not a designated break, or it's not. I just don't feel like at least in a tournament format. Cash games, we all know that's just completely different. And everybody who argues that is an idiot too. It's like, oh, cash game tournaments, the same thing. Then you live
That's
on fucking
stupid.
planet. You live on planet moron, because that is
Right.
not how the world works in the game. But I just feel like from the tournament standpoint, for the integrity of the game, when you're talking about millions of dollars, they blatantly had a laptop at the final table. The earpiece controversy, sure, maybe he's wearing a headset, maybe he's not, whatever. But again, it shouldn't be allowed. It just
Yeah.
shouldn't. And shame on the World Series of Poker for not only not doing something about it, but the fact they've just ignored it like it didn't even happen is beyond unacceptable. It's beyond unacceptable. And I just think from the standpoint, sorry to circle back to kind of what you're saying, I do
Mhm.
believe that people can use technology, and the game's obviously different because there's so much more at people's fingertips, but do it away from the table. Do it,
Mm.
don't, and when I mean away from the table, don't do it in the middle of a hand or between hands. Like, if you're going to get coached, do it away on a designated break, away from the cameras at the very least. Because God, how bad of a look did that? I just think it looked bad. It's like, dude,
Right.
you have the biggest main event in history, all these eyes on it, and there's laptops everywhere. Just looked weird.
Yeah. No, I see it on both ends. I think it's good and it's also bad, all at the same time, you know. And I'm curious, what's the common community approach like? Do they agree with it? Do they disagree with it? Are there a lot of people that are like, is it pretty split? Like, what would you say it's a percentage? Because I'm not really paying attention that close.
I would have thought it was going to be more split. I
Uh-huh.
thought it was going to be split when I started posting stuff when it happened. I
Mm,
thought I would have people arguing for the point of Nietzsche and Tamayo saying like, oh, of course, they're not doing anything wrong and this and that. There was a very large consensus of players that I greatly respect as well, that are crushers, that are like, no, they're hurting the game beyond repair. They're
mm,
going to drive away the profitable part of this game, which is the recreational player, dead money, doesn't study, likes to have fun, wants to gamble. They're driving that player out of the way, making the game significantly tougher than it has to be. And I agree with that to an extent. I believe the tools are there for us to get better, and as long as it's done the right way. But like I love the argument of people saying the game is completely solved. It is far from solved. Nobody plays perfect. There's no one that plays like a robot or bot, right? Nobody.
right.
But to the point of a lot of people saying that online poker has been damaged from bots and solvers and RTA and all these things, I feel like that's not true, because I know plenty of people making plenty of money online. But at the same time, yeah, we don't want people to know that those tools exist, and let alone use them on television at a major final table, the World Series of Poker final table, where you have all these sponsors, all these people watching. It just wasn't a good look. But yeah, I think the
I
consensus
gotcha.
is people didn't like it, and they hope that it doesn't happen again. And there has to be a clear-cut rule and some kind of enforcement. If you have floor people, right? If you have a tournament director and floor managers walking around monitoring which they should be doing anyways, right? Isn't that the
Right.
whole point? We're supposed to be making sure people aren't cheating, right? That's the
Yeah.
whole point of the floor. So
Yeah.
I just think, yes, is it hard to enforce? Probably, but
Yeah.
something needs to be done.
See, this is why my favorite is always live cash games, just because you're there, you get the value is very face up. You can, another thing with the whole thing that solvers can't really solve for is like, how is this person acting all of a sudden when he has a hand? Oh, how is his betting pattern like? Is he fucking hiccuping after every single time he makes a bluff? Is he lifting up his left leg every single time? Does he get more high pitched, or does he order a drink every single time he
Yeah,
does this?
the solver doesn't have a filter for, is he four modelos in or is he seven modelos in,
And
right? Did he have two Casa Azul shots or five Casa Azul
you
shots?
see what I mean? Exactly. And so
We
therefore,
need to
like,
invent that filter.
invent that filter, right? I think I think that's just the reason why I love playing live and love playing live cash, just because it's just straight up value. You know exactly what you're getting.
It's
You can
fair.
see who the hell you're doing it, and it looks awkward, I guess, if you're at a table trying to be in a solver while in the middle of a hand. So I guess there's
Totally.
do you mind if I
Absolutely.
use the bathroom here real quick?
No, sure, of course. I
All
think I
right,
can
right
pause,
back.
right?
Right back.
I just discovered it. All right,
Yeah.
welcome back. Yeah,
Yeah.
so pee break, pee break.
Pee break. Yes, we're at that
Well,
age for pee breaks
well,
every
yeah,
freaking 10
welcome back.
minutes.
Yeah. I mean, there isn't much left to talk about. I feel like we could do like 6 or 7 episodes, to be honest. But I ask this question to every guest, and I want to keep this tradition going as
Okay.
long as I have guests on this podcast. But if you're stranded on an island and you can only bring 3 items with you, what are those 3 items? And there's no phone and no internet.
No phone, no internet. 3 things. Oh my God.
They can be anything.
My God, Chris, I was not ready for this question in any way, shape, or form.
You must have peed out the answer.
I must have peed out the answer. Dude, that's actually a big I can only think of 3
What's the first item that comes to mind? If you're like,
Bro.
if I'm stuck somewhere, what do I absolutely have to have on me?
I have to have food. That's the number one thing I'm thinking of. So I hate to be like food, water, or something, but that's like literally the only things I can think of.
That's pretty fair. I think that's pretty solid.
Probably some weed too. Food, water,
Okay.
weed. That would probably be the 3.
I mean, so you're hydrated, stoned, and your munchies are covered. I like that.
Yeah,
Honestly,
I
that's pretty solid.
I feel like the only way you can get through being stranded on an island is being baked. I'm not gonna lie.
Just don't eat too fast. Don't eat too fast, right? I
Oh
like
man.
that. No,
Yeah.
I the reason I asked that question is because like I feel like everybody has a completely different answer. I thought you would go more of what Kenny's route was when we had him on the show. Like
Okay.
he was like, I'm gonna have like a fire making kit, and I'm gonna have like something to make shelter. And he started getting really practical, right?
Wow.
Like tools. Like he was talking about tools. He's like, fuck food and fuck like all like entertainment stuff. He's like, I need to survive. Like, what do I need to survive? And I was like, well, that's brilliant. He went like straight survival mode, right? You're like, I need food because you got to eat. I need water
Right.
because you have to hydrate, and then weed because that keeps your sanity, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Well, it just goes to show you that between me and him, he's gonna live and I'm gonna die. Like real quickly there. I'm too much of a prima donna to fucking survive it. Sorry, guys. If you ever needing some island survival tactics, I am not the guy for you.
Fucking Allen. Don't bring
I am
Allen if you're
not
stranded.
MacGyver. I am not that guy at all.
God.
No,
Oh
no.
my God. That's too much.
No.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. We went way over time, but I think we got some good nuggets there. I didn't even cover like 90% of the topics I wanted to cover. I think we just got too into talking about each other, but as we do. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, brother. Like I'm like I said, I wouldn't be here without you. I'm incredibly excited about your success and your journey. And by the way, you look fantastic. I know you've been training for a fitness competition coming up. You look absolutely out of this world. I watch your stories and I'm like, damn, the second I see it, I get my ass doing cardio or some kind of movement. I'm like, all right, put the chips down. It's time to get my ass on the treadmill and start working out. So
Nice.
but no, I can't be more proud of you, dude. And we'll have you on again. We got to what do you think, guys? We got to have Allen on again. We got to there's more to the story. We got to hear more of the story, the journey up to this point, and some of the other crazy shenanigans we've done over the years. So
yeah, well, Chris, I have a goal when you invited me on here, because I know we're going to talk mainly about fitness. The goal that I have here, I'm going to put it out to the universe, is I'm going to have either some significant tournament win or some significant crushing session on like Hustler Live or something. And that's one of the times you're going to bring me on here to talk about that. So that's the goal.
I like
that's
that.
where we're going to be. Hell
I like
yes.
that.
And Chris, thank you for having me on. I'm very proud of where we're both at and the fact that we're still pushing each other to be better this many years later. And I'm so excited to see where your growth is going to be, especially with this podcast, guys. So really, really am.
Thank you, brother. Means a lot.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Next time, just tune in. The more degeneracy, more bullshit, and catch ShiftEQ Podcast, guys. It's amazing. And something that will already happen by the time this gets released. I'm appearing on the Snap Call podcast.
I
Monday
saw.
night, we're recording. I think they do a live broadcast. So that'll be live. If you guys want to check that out, obviously this will be released after that, but
Yep.
I'll make some kind of an announcement tonight and tomorrow. I'm very excited. I love what those guys are doing. They have a great show. They do it in like a seasonal format. They only record like 10 or 12 episodes and then they take a long break and stuff. So it's pretty cool what they've built there. And they just partnered with a major card room in Florida. All those guys are on the East Coast. So that's pretty exciting. I would love to have something like that. Wink, wink. If you guys card rooms are
Heyo.
listening, the gardens, commerce, the bike, right?
Hell yeah,
Would
bro.
love that. Would love to have this show and host it at a card room, but in due time. So want to thank all of the sponsors. This will be, like I said, pre-recorded, but we have Fraser Watch Company. It is a veteran owned business. I'm actually wearing one of their timepieces right here. It's my
Woo.
favorite timepiece. When I go out with the wife or I want to be seen and show off, I'm definitely wearing a Fraser, and check it out, guys. I'll have a link below to purchase a watch through the podcast. I think the promo code's Cold Deck or Cold Deck Chris. I'll have to double check on that. But they're pretty affordable watches for how nice they are. I think their most expensive watch is under $1,000. So you can live in luxury without spending the money you would on a house. So it's kind of nice. And I also want to thank Clubs Poker. You guys, it's amazing. We have legal online poker here in the United States. Finally, they use the sweeps model. Again, a link to sign up below. Play for free, but win for real. All right, guys. All right. Next time, we'll probably have another solo podcast. I'll have another guest. I don't want to reveal who it is, but I'm lining up some heavy hitters, and we're going to have some fun with it. Until next time, guys. Thank you, Allen. Again, thank you, my brother. Take care, guys.
Deuce.